So let's talk more about what the Fed's decision will mean with NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Cheung. So, Brian, we've been anticipating this cut, right, for a while now. Is this where you expected the Fed would end up? How significant is a half a percentage point cut here?
Well, it actually had a lot of Wall Street analysts and just casual market watchers a little bit surprised. Someone said we didn't expect the Fed to cut by half a percentage point, maybe something like a quarter percentage point. But it's important to remember exactly how we got here and the reason why interest rates were high in the first place. The big story post-pandemic was inflation. Inflation going up to around 9% at its peak in the summer of 2022. During that process, the Federal Reserve, which is the steward of the U.S. economy through their interest rate policy, said, all right, we need to raise borrowing costs to take steam out of this economy to make inflation go down. And it largely did that job. But the question is, OK, well, now with inflation going sideways here, it's certainly a vast improvement from that 9%. Can they cut interest rates to make sure that this economy doesn't hit the tarmac too hard? And hitting the tarmac too hard would look like this. Unemployment ticking up more substantially than it is right now. It's a little hard to see because unemployment did peak at around 15%. But you can see it's actually been drifting up a little bit over the past few months. It was around 3.5%. The last measure was 4.2%. That's why the Federal Reserve said, you know what, let's recalibrate our policy, cut interest rates by half a percentage point to make sure that unemployment doesn't go up any further. But indeed, a surprise to some, Aaron.
So, Brian, let's break this down for the folks at home in a real world application sort of a way here. What do these cuts actually mean for people as they're going about their lives, trying to figure out how to spend and save?
Yeah, well, all of that I just went through was kind of like econ textbook stuff. But what does it mean for regular people? Well, we're talking about mortgages, auto rates, and also credit card rates, right? And they've gone up substantially as a result of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. Here are your average rates that you were paying in 2020 for a 30-year fixed mortgage, for a car loan, in addition to your credit cards. And check out what it looks like in 2024, right? We all know the mortgage market is a lot more painful now than it was in 2020. 6.1% is your 30-year fixed mortgage rate. 8.6% for auto loans, and 21.5% for credit cards, by some measures an all-time high. So what we can expect after the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by half a percentage point today is, all right, these interest rates, which are tied indirectly to what the Fed does, they're not going to go down by exactly half a percentage point, but they should be going down. In fact, mortgage rates have already been coming down over the past few months. It was around 8% in October of last year. It's been drifting down in anticipation of what the Fed did today. With your auto loans and credit card rates, these could go down a little bit more marginally in the next few months as well.
So, Brian, very quickly, what comes next here? The Fed hinted at additional cuts potentially.
Yeah, well, the Federal Reserve also had projections for where interest rates could go from here, and the projection is at least another 50 basis points or 0.5% in interest rate cuts by the end of this year. That implies there could be more interest rate cuts in their November and December meetings, which are on the calendar for the rest of 2024, Aaron.
All right, Brian Cheung for us today. Brian, thank you. And joining me now is Jason Furman, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama. Jason, thanks for being here today. First, I do want to get your reaction to today's announcement from the Fed. What's your take on this?
I think it's terrific, and it's a real vote of confidence in the U.S. economy, and it's well-deserved. Inflation has come down a lot. It's not all the way to the Fed's target, but it's getting closer. The risks have grown a little bit on the employment side, not a lot. And so the Fed is starting this process of getting us back to normal.
And we have the Fed telling Americans that its plan is working, that inflation is cooling, right? Lay folks, voters, have said that's not the reality at my house. So even if economic fundamentals are strong at this point, how do you explain this to people who say they still feel a gut punch from high prices?
Yeah, look, the problem is that people are rightfully incredibly frustrated about the huge increase in prices in 2021, 2022, and into 2023. And the Fed cannot undo that. We cannot get prices back to where they were in 2019. The only way to do that would be to engineer just a massive depression. What the Fed can do is get us going forward back to normal. Inflation rising at 2% a year. And the good news is wages are rising a lot faster than 2% a year. So every year, people are starting to make up some of that lost ground, but it's not going to get there right away. And the best they can do is just start the process and keep it going. And that's what they're doing now.
I do want to ask you, too, about your op-ed in the Wall Street Journal this week. And you argue in this race, this presidential race, the evaluation is clear. Mr. Trump's ideas on tariffs, the budget, and the Federal Reserve pose a much greater risk to the economy than Ms. Harris's. Now, you say that both of them have floated bad ideas. Expand on what you've written here.
Yeah, so, in political campaigns, there's all sorts of things that are about appealing to voters rather than appealing to economists. I get that. I also hear a bunch of ideas that I like. Vice President Harris talking about expanding the child tax credit. But when it comes to economic growth, yeah, the big three are you going to have a huge across the board tariff, trade war, tax on families? Trump wants to do that. It would be terrible. What are you going to do to the budget deficit? Neither of them are taking it seriously enough. But Trump is proposing much more deficit increases. And finally, the Fed. This administration's been very good at respecting the independence of the Fed, letting it make the hard choices that have put us on this better economic track.
So one of the big questions that we hear during campaign seasons is the question of, is the economy better than it was 4 years ago? If that is the case now, why is that not something we've heard the vice president lean into more in her talking about the economy?
Look, I don't know exactly how to phrase things if you're trying to be president. I can tell you what the facts are about the economy, which is it's a really impressive recovery. By the way, we're the envy of the world. I travel around the world, and people would love their economies to be like the United States in terms of our economic growth, our productivity growth, our inflation rate, our employment rate. We're in much, much better shape than we're in, but it's still hard for a lot of people. A lot of people haven't recovered from the inflation. The unemployment rate has ticked up a little bit recently. And so how to get this, both halves of the message, the challenges you face, the strengths, and be forward looking about here's, what I'm going to do about it. That's not easy.
I do want to ask you something. We'll put something on the screen here. This is from Donald Trump's proposed tax cuts. What would the impact of all these proposals be on the federal budget, practically, as you look at it? Could we handle this sort of a drop in revenue?
Yeah, so my math skills aren't good enough to add all that up, but it looks to me like it's over $10 trillion. That is enormous, massive. If you did something like that, you would rekindle a huge amount of inflation. The Fed would have to raise interest rates quite a lot to offset that. Other taxes would probably need to go up. That's somewhere between, sort of fake pandering that's never going to happen is the good case here. And, something that will happen and causes all that harm is the bad case here.
So we know that every president sort of takes a big swing on economic legislation, right? As we just have just a few seconds left here, I do want to ask you, we know for Obama, it was health care. For Trump, it was tax cuts. For Biden, it was the IRA. What would you want to see President Harris go big on were she to win the election?
If I only got one word, it would be children. That was the part of Biden's agenda he did not get done on a permanent basis. There's so much more we could do to expand opportunities for children, invest in children, reduce children's poverty. We know how to do all of that. I would love to see her do it, and it would help the economy over the longer term as well.
All right, Jason Furman, we appreciate your time and your perspective today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, the decision to lower rates will certainly get some play on the campaign trail as both candidates are looking to sell their economic visions now. Moments ago in Raleigh, North Carolina, the Republican vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, weighing in on this, using today's Fed decision to renew a Trump campaign argument, blaming Biden and Harris's policies for the recent rise in prices.
It's better than nothing. But again, the reason why we have sky-high inflation, the reason why we have high interest rates is because Kamala Harris cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Explosion Act, and then she tried to do everything she could to shut down American energy. So Americans are suffering from this stuff, and the fact that the Fed is going to give them a little relief in the midst of an election, by the way, is nothing compared to the disaster that Kamala Harris's policies have caused in this country.
And moments ago, Harris called the Fed decision, quote, welcome news for Americans who have borne the brunt of high prices. Joining me now is NBC News chief political analyst Todd to sort of pick apart this and some other things of the day. So, Chuck, first I'll ask you, the Fed decision that came down today, what's your read on that and how the campaigns might see it?
Look, I was the half point rather than the quarter point, I think, is certainly something that should settle the markets, should please the markets. what was interesting was sort of the coverage of this debate between quarter and half, and the perception was, well, if Powell doesn't want to be accused of somehow putting a finger on the scale with the election. Look, first election I covered, one of the presidential candidates blamed the Fed chair for lowering interest rates and somehow helping the opponent. I mean, this isn't a new criticism. I thought it was very gentle criticism that Vance made there. He made, and oh, by the way, during an election year, sort of implying that maybe this was the case, but I think Powell would have looked like he was being too cautious and too worried about political outcomes if he'd only gone a quarter point here. So this, to me, looks like, and I've spent a lot of time with Chairman Powell, this looks like more in accordance with how he behaves, not necessarily a political guy. And we should remember, he is a Trump appointee.
Right, he is. I want to ask you, too, the campaigns have been talking about their economic policies and plans, things that have sort of been sweet, right? Dropping the candy for voters. Do you think...
No pain at all.
Well, and we know that some of these things just won't work in different ways. Do you think voters are enticed by that, or do they sort of see through it?
Boy, I assume voters see through this now, since we've been through so many promises and seeing what can't get done and things like that. I will say this. I think it's been a bit risky of Harris not to have a lot out there. Not to sort of... You asked a fascinating question, because think about this. At this point in a campaign, we normally have an idea of what's the big thing they're going to do. Yeah. Right? We knew that with Biden, that it was going to be COVID-related, but it was going to be a big thing involving... You knew with, as you pointed out, Trump with tax cuts. We knew with Obama. He made that health care pledge during his primary campaign. What is her first 100 days? What is the, on day one, I'm going to do X? We know what he's going to try to do on day one. Whether you agree with it or not, there are plans to do that. I think this, and I understand it's very, I'd say a bit risk averse. You put too much paper out there and suddenly you're the center, and she wants to make Trump the story and everything about that. And look, his tariff proposals, I think, have been easy for Harris to beat up on, and she's talking to him that way. So there's risk in putting it. But I wonder if that's, if that's going to hurt her at some point. If voters are going, yeah, I don't like what he's doing, but what are you going to do? And it's been a lot of vagueness. We don't have, it was interesting what he said. I'm surprised she hasn't leaned further into some sort of care economy tax break, not just for child care, but long-term care, because we all have now, I'm in a generation of squeezed, right? We got parents and kids that fall into this care economy. It's a good place for her to be. I'm just surprised there's been no details.
Last thing I want to ask you about this. Harris appears to have closed the gap in some of the polling on the economy. Right. How big of a deal is that for the campaign?
Well, not only that, Aaron, you know who's noticed this? The Trump campaign. They're out with some blistering ads now over the last 2 days that I've noticed that connect her to Bidenomics, have her talking how good Bidenomics is. They realize being separated from Joe Biden has helped her perception with voters on the economy. The Trump campaign realizes Biden's name next to the economy is negative. It's a bad thing to be associated with. I'll be curious to see if they stay disciplined. I think they think if you tie her more back to Biden, she will then feel the impact of people's negative perceptions on Biden's economy. If it starts to get traction, I think she's going to have to find a way to separate herself from Biden's economy here a little bit, because Biden's economy is unpopular. And why do we know this? Because Harris has so far been able to separate herself on this issue.
I do want to turn to your column now and talk about the state of our current political discourse. Yeah. It was a fascinating read. It went through a range of emotions thinking about some of the stuff you've written.
It's frustrating, isn't it, to watch this? Because I know we all know, and ultimately we realize, I think we've perverted ourselves. We are living in a funhouse mirror. And I watch it with with friends and family of mine who have this view of people on the other side of whatever their other side is, that is very perverted. And you realize people are being served up the worst version of their political foes. They're not even, it's the worst version. And we wonder why are these stories believed before they're debunked? And, I don't think we fully appreciate how much our information ecosystem has really been abused and used to divide us. Look, are politicians exploiting it? Is Donald Trump exploiting this? Yes. There's no doubt. But that's who's putting us in these positions.
Well, and you suggested it's happening in a couple of different ways. First, from the campaigns and the candidates themselves, and the surrogates and all the like out there talking about each other or
what happens is, you react, you get attacked, and then you feel like you need to fight back, and you start using the same language. And then you start, it's the demonization, and we've gotten to this, and the impact that has on a mentally disturbed person. Look, most people are not going to act out on their threats, but there are mentally challenged folks who could get impacted by this. That's what we've learned this with any kind of shooter, any kind of attempted assassin. They have a fragile mind. They've gotten impacted by this, and the irresponsibility. Again, obviously there's some irresponsible political leaders here, but our tech companies have algorithmicked us into this division, and we can't seem to get out of this.
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you about, and we'll put a part of your column up on the screen here so folks can see it as well. You said the problem with political discourse in America right now is that we are all stuck in a social media funhouse mirror booth. What we see isn't what is, and how we're seen isn't who we are, and yet here we are. This sort of lines up with what we've been talking about with Springfield and Springfield, Ohio, and the cats and such.
Right, and everybody rationalizes their harsh rhetoric by saying, but didn't you see this? And you're like, you got a perverted version of this. And yet they don't believe us anymore as, the mainstream media filter. And we can go through a variety of reasons why that's the case. But I think it goes back to these algorithms that just feed more stuff to you in order to keep you online, keep you engaged. And we all know anger and fear. It's interesting. I've seen a few experiments. If you get people to pause before they respond to something, or if you suggest using less toxic words, it's amazing how you can de-escalate a situation quickly. What's really frustrating is human beings are automatic de-escalators. For some reason online. Well, I think when we're physically together.
Together, yes.
It's the fact when there's no human interaction, no human connection, there's no de-escalator.
And you have to hope that there's some way to find the middle ground.
And I know, I'm a middle-aged guy yelling into the void, but I don't think we have talked about this problem enough.
Yeah.
It is not a one-sided problem. This is an issue that our information ecosystem has been poisoned by these algorithms and social media companies, and we need to face up to it.
I encourage folks to read Chuck's column on NBCNews.com right now. Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.